All right, folks, this is Professor Diffley again, Philosophy 220, Criminal Justice Ethics. Finishing up the slides here. So we're on common, last video, we were on ethical approaches to lies in courts and ethical views on lying in police work. So now we are in common ethical issues in police work. So what we're going to cover is this a broad category of corruption is noble cause corruption. This is a moral commitment. This noble cause. A noble cause is a moral commitment to make the world a safer place, right? And so this is can become corruption when you go and do whatever is you deem necessary or whatever you have to do in order to accomplish these goals. So essentially, noble cause corruption is saying that the ends justify the means, no matter what. That's how far they're going with this, and that's what they're trying to do. Again, so this is, no matter what we got to do, even if we got to break the law to enforce the law, that's okay if it gets the criminals off the streets. This is corruption because, again, you're in for various reasons. Again, this is the view. The utilitarians would say the view that the means are not as important as the ends here. So how do you combat this? Because, often these people, they want to do good. Say, one example of noble cause corruption that I think may resonate to say that a criminal keeps getting arrested and keeps getting out on technicalities, or just keeps getting released, comes out, keeps doing the same crimes. A cop in a noble cause corruption case would want to get them off the streets, and if the legal means aren't doing it, they'll go to find other extra legal or unethical means, and that would be noble cause corruption. So this is what should be considered when you're combating this. Is what you're about to take in illegal? Is what you're about to do allowed under policy by the department? Is it unethical? Is it acceptable under any ethical system, or just utilitarianism? So if it's illegal, then don't do it. Is it allowed under the policy? If it violates policy, then no. Is it unethical? Again, that's lying, the different tactics you may use. And you can't just rely on utilitarianism, because that, again, you can. This is, remember when we talked about this earlier in the course. Utilitarianism criticism is that it could seemingly allow anything. I remember the killing of an innocent to save others, not just the train hypo, but the hypothetical in one of the videos where you have to physically murder someone, and that's also in the trolley problem as well. So we need to view if there's more than just utilitarianism, which again anybody can sort of rationalize anything under, then that is a problem. More on gratuities. Again, we've talked about this. Gratuity is a gift. Most of them given to officers by workers in the service industry. And gratuities are given for services expected or services already rendered. So, say I'm a police officer and I had helped you in, I don't know, with something to get your car back. Anything. Just make something up. And now when I see you at your store, you're paying me, right? Oh, thank you. You helped me so much. I appreciate it. Here's some free services and things like that. Now, why is that considered corrupt? The idea is that you're already getting paid for your job. You don't get a reward from the citizen in that case. And that could, create the idea that maybe you only help those who pay you. And you can see how that would be corrupt. Again, and we talked about this, the example of free coffees. They often do come with strings attached, even if they are tiny, strings. They could build up. Again, the slippery slope is what we're about to see. Maybe I run a restaurant or a diner. I give cops in the local area free coffee, free coffee, pie, anything. And so I could do this because I'm wanting to have the police around as a, protection for the business, that sort of thing. Maybe, now that I'm building up all this goodwill with them, maybe they'll let me off if I do something wrong, that sort of thing. So, and again, you can't know the person's motivations. That's the problem. I can tell you I'm giving you this with no strings attached, but can you necessarily believe me? And when you figure out that you couldn't believe me, then often you've crossed that ethical line there in many ways. So 4 main reasons, again, reciprocity. That's what I was just talking. They owe you something, or you owe them something. To ensure future cooperation. Again, that's you'll let me off. To officers to attract the advertisement and use admit to potential patrons that it's safe and to keep unwanted or problematic patrons away. And these main reasons why, from studies of why business owners or service industry folks give these gratuities to police or seek to give them to the police and other law enforcement officials. We know this. So we have data to say that this was, or evidence to say that the strings are actually attached. And again, why is this a problem? The slippery slope problem. Again, watch the required videos, which this is mentioned as both slippery slope and as incrementalism, because again, a slippery slope is every tiny step forward. It's bringing you closer to sliding down into an unethical, incremental, same sort of concept. So in the way this is a problem is you often don't know you cross the well. Let me restate it. The way this could happen is you start off, it seems insignificant individually, right? All these tiny little things, but they add up. And then it pushes you more and more over the edge, or just added up are unethical. One step leads to another. Coffee leads to a coffee and donut. Eventually, the officer's demanding a free dinner, that sort of thing. And again, according to studies and books on this, lead to a situation that's difficult to officer to stop doing or turn around, right? Once it becomes habitual. Again, that's a very virtue ethics thing, right? You become virtuous by doing virtuous acts, by being virtuous. So this would seem to suggest you also become unethical, or one way is to by doing unethical things. That just keeps adding up. And so look at the ethical views. Absolutists would say, and this is sort of deontological, it would be this. Rule is no cup of coffee for free, right? Nobody. Why? There's no difference between taking that gratuity and cash or something wrong. Both are wrong. Simple as that. The rule is don't do it. Follow the rule. And this again is how the codes of ethics see it. Deontological again. I mentioned this before. Why would this be undesirable? Because everybody's giving it away. Utilitarianism. Probably negatives outweigh the positives. If you could argue that would be the problem. Negatives, you're losing money. Creating this sense of creating a corrupt environment. Alternative views. Again, as I had said earlier too in a previous video in this for this module chapter, is that virtue ethics would probably want to figure out if this. You ask what's the excess? Is this the best middle ground there? Again, it's not clear. How everybody would interpret this, or how you may interpret it. Alternative view. Small gratuity is permissible in certain circumstances, part of a community building project. So again, one of the issues often cited for problems between police and everyday folks is sort of tensions between them. Problems, lack of trust, or there seems to be a wall between them. And you see this here in lots of cities where they'll do these community policing outreaches. They'll be at different events. They'll hold coffee with a cop, I've seen, or neighborhood events. And so say we're doing a block party on our street, and the officers who walk the beat so we're in a city, they walk the beat all the time. They come around. We want to offer them a hot dog or take a seat. Here's some food or water. We really don't mean it. They're part of our community. They're our neighbors, and you're trying to just offer to them. Some would argue is despite the prohibition on the gratuities, then maybe you take it because it could be perceived culturally like if I as rejecting those people, right? Whether you think you're too good for them, some people, these types of minor gratuities in some cultures, in cultural settings, is seen as it's just polite, right? It's just kindness, of human kindness, neighborly kindness. So some are saying that this can be done in certain circumstances. The argument for that is it has to be a very strict situation, a very controllable situation, like the one I just described at a community gathering or something like that, where there can be small signs of that. Everybody's aware of it. It's the superiors, everybody again. But the drawback is that now it could set a precedent, and this could go bad. So you gotta figure out where you come down on that. It's still up for debate. Doctors can receive gratuities. But police officers should. Not all professions you're supposed to get. Some are. There's some in service industry we do it often. But in certain situations, just not there. Police are professionals, and professionals don't take gratuities. So that is one view of it. Again, the different treatment. public confidence eroding as a result, slippery slope, incrementalism is really a problem. And again, police get paid paid by the public to treat everyone well. And again, it could just the appearance of impropriety of these different gratuities, it could be enough to erode confidence, and so that's what's trying to be avoided here. Again, more of this, you're expected to protect all of society, right? To serve and to protect. It doesn't say just certain groups, let alone hold biases against certain groups. I mean, this is just the way humans are. We know that. Takes people will have biases. Not everybody, but you get what I mean. People will have them. How do you combat it? It's difficult, right? You got to be aware of them. If you're aware of them, then you can do something about it. But really, then work again. This is where virtue ethics really does have, actually, I would argue, an application for all of us. Is we really can practice these things and to be good. And so you have to. It's something to work at there. There are different tricks for it, but again, just seeing them as just equal to everybody else. It would really be the view. Use of force. Here's some more on this. Is where you're allowed to use force, obviously, as a police officer in certain situations, but when and where, there's a continuum of them, and these cases we'll talk about. There's the reasonableness. You only use Tennessee v. Gardner says. Excuse me, can only use deadly force with probable cause when a suspect poses a serious threat. So right there, that seems to set a own boundary. But later, Graham versus O'Connor argues that a Supreme Court justice focused on the concept of reasonableness and state that use of force is something determined by split-second decision. So you got to consider other factors in there: severity of the crime, where it was, the threat to the officer, what was the suspect resisting, and was the suspect attempting to flee? Did the cop feel threatened? These are all things that, again, it's almost impossible to know unless you're in that person's footstep. And this has been a criticism of this, or in that position. Criticism of this is, is this creating a way for police in these situations to just really have a line that's accepted by the courts, right? Is I felt threatened, deadly threatened. It's really hard to disprove that. That's a very individual thing. Again, unless you've been in a situation like that, you're not going to know what it's truly like. So some argue, maybe does this give them a free pass, right? If you just know what you're supposed to say, what's gotten others off, it's nearly impossible to verify or to successfully dispute. That's open for debate as well. But this is one of the ideas here. So there is use of force, a continuum. These lots of departments will have these. You can see these right of. It's a step of escalating it, or you can see it as de-escalation. But when things are needed, and because obviously, you will have to use force at some point. Hopefully you don't have to, but it's conceivable that you would, right? Officer presence, that's enough to just keep things going. Verbalization, don't do it. Stop, don't move. Empty hand control, you got to use to gain control of a situation. This is more right. You have someone arresting. You gotta hold them down to get the cuffs on, that sort of thing. Less lethal, this would be CEDs, essentially what we would call stun guns, that sort of thing. Pepper sprays, chemical blunt impact. Would be to knock them out physically with your baton or your hands or radio or anything like that, and then lethal force obviously is the farce end of this. So why do some police use excessive force? Ways to combat this. There's a good discussion in the text. Now it's really hard to tell. It's again. Most will never do this, but some do. And again, maybe it comes to training. A lot of times, sometimes these people maybe just had a bad day. Then, they snapped. It's not all the time, but that could be one. You got to find out what is going on. And it's really hard to know yet what this is. So how do you avoid all this ethical behavior? Really, just, encounter situations. Think about, how you should do this. And really, critical thinking. Is it legal? What will the results? What will the results be? Is there a better way to do these? These are all questions, and this comes from training. But really, the media test, or another way is, how would you feel if this was on the front page tomorrow? Would you be embarrassed? Would you know it's wrong? And so the media test that says, is part of this. If it's out there, you don't want other people to know, then it's probably not a good thing. Gut test, realizing if it feels wrong, it probably is. And so, really take a look at these, but they really do work together. If it feels wrong, it likely is. That is often it. If you don't want other people knowing, that's telling, to say the least. All right, that is the end of the lecture videos. If you got any questions, let me know. Thank you.